The Grand Convergence Hall was the largest structure Sergeant Cole had ever seen. It floated in the emptiness of space, a massive station built from white metal and blue crystal. 200 species had sent their leaders here. They came to talk about peace, trade, and the future of the galaxy. Stood near one of the tall windows and watched ships arrive from every direction. Each one carried creatures he had never imagined could exist. He was not supposed to be here. Humans had only made contact with alien life 40 years ago. In the eyes of the galaxy, his species was young, primitive, and unimportant. Most aliens looked at humans the way humans looked at insects. They were small. They were simple. They were not worth much attention. But an old treaty had strange rules. Every species recognized by the Galactic Convergence could send one guard to stand beside a foreign leader during the summit. It was supposed to be an honor, a symbol of trust between worlds. The Dominion, one of the oldest and most powerful empires in known space, had been assigned a human guard. That human was. He understood what this assignment really meant. It was a joke, a way for the galaxy to laugh at humanity. The Empress had her own guards, warriors who had trained for centuries. They wore armor made from materials humans could not even name. They carried weapons that could destroy buildings with a single shot. And next to them stood a human soldier in simple gray armor with a rifle that most species considered ancient. The Empress arrived on the third day of the summit. Her name was, and she had ruled for 300 years. She was tall, almost 8 feet, with skin the color of dark silver. She had 4 eyes that glowed soft purple, and she moved with the grace of someone who had never known fear. When she walked through the halls, other leaders stepped aside. When she spoke, the room fell silent. Took his position beside her throne as the treaty required. The royal guards looked at him with disgust. They did not speak to him. They did not acknowledge him. To them, he was an insect standing where he did not belong. The Empress herself barely glanced at him. Once, during a long ceremony, her eyes passed over him the way someone might look at a piece of furniture. He existed. That was all she cared to notice. Did not mind. He was not here to be noticed. He was here to do his job. And his job was to watch. Humans had spent their entire history fighting each other, war after war after war. They had learned, through blood and pain, how to see danger before it arrived. Had served in 3 conflicts on Earth before first contact. He had seen what people looked like when they planned to kill. He had learned to read the small signs that others missed. So he watched. He watched the delegates from other species. He saw how the ambassador smiled too wide when he looked at the Empress. He noticed how certain servants moved through the crowd with purpose instead of duty. He observed a young diplomat whose hands shook whenever spoke, not from fear, but from something darker. On the 4th day, noticed something that made his blood turn cold. The Empress was scheduled to perform an ancient ceremony called the Blessing of the Young. Children from various colonies would be brought before her. She would touch their heads and speak words of hope for their future. It was a beautiful tradition, one that showed the gentle side of a powerful ruler. But among the servants preparing for the ceremony, spotted a face he recognized. A servant, one he had seen meeting with the nervous diplomat. The servant was not supposed to be anywhere near the ceremony. Yet there he was, arranging flowers near the place where the children would stand. Moved closer, pretending to check his equipment. The servant did not notice him. Humans were beneath notice, after all. Was close enough to hear the servant whisper into a hidden communicator. The package is in position. The child will be ready. Felt his stomach drop. He needed to warn someone. He approached the captain of the Royal Guard, a massive warrior named. The captain had 4 arms and eyes like burning coals. He looked down at the way a giant might look at an ant. "The human speaks," said, his voice dripping with mockery. "What wisdom do you bring us, primitive?" Kept his voice calm. "I believe there is a threat to the Empress. I have observed suspicious activity among the servants and the delegation. The ceremony tomorrow may be targeted. Laughed. It was not a kind laugh. You have been among the stars for 40 years. My people have protected the throne for 40,000. You think you see something we have missed. I think someone is planning to use the ceremony to hurt the Empress. Please, just investigate the servant who was arranging flowers near the children's platform. The captain leaned down until his face was inches from. His breath was hot and smelled like copper. Listen carefully, human. The Empress has survived 17 assassination attempts. 17. Each time my guards discovered and stopped the threat. We do not need advice from a species that still kills itself over patches of dirt on a single planet. He straightened and turned away. Return to your position. Stand quietly. Try not to embarrass your species more than you already have. Stood alone in the corridor. His warning had been ignored. Of course it had been ignored. He was human, he was nothing. But he had seen what he had seen. He knew what he knew. That night did not sleep. He accessed every piece of information he could find about the hegemony. He studied the layout of the ceremony hall. He checked his equipment 3 times, his rifle, his knife, and a small device hidden in his blood, something left over from his days in special operations on Earth. A nano-jammer capable of disrupting electronic signals within a short range. It was illegal in 70 star systems. He had carried it for 15 years just in case. Tomorrow the Empress would bless the children of her empire. Tomorrow someone would try to kill her. The royal guard did not believe him. The other species did not see him. He was alone, one human against a conspiracy that spanned star systems. Checked his rifle one more time. Then he sat in the darkness and waited for dawn. He did not know if he could stop what was coming. He only knew that he had to try. The morning came slowly. Had not slept at all, but he did not feel tired. His body remembered how to function without rest. Years of war had taught him that. When danger was close, sleep became a luxury he could not afford. He needed more information. The royal guard had dismissed him, but that did not mean he had to stop. Humans were stubborn. It was perhaps their greatest flaw and perhaps their greatest strength. Left his quarters before the station's artificial sun began to glow. He moved through the lower levels of Axis Prime, the parts of the station where servants and workers lived. The aliens down here were different from the elegant delegates above. They were tired. They were poor. They were invisible to the powerful, just like was. He found a small drinking establishment where workers gathered before their shifts. He sat in a corner and listened. Humans were good at listening. They had learned, through centuries of conflict, that information was more valuable than weapons. The conversations around him were in dozens of languages. His translator implant struggled to keep up, but slowly, pieces of a picture began to form. The hegemony was unhappy. They had been unhappy for a long time. The Dominion controlled trade routes that they needed. For centuries, they had tried to change this through diplomacy. They had failed. Now whispers said they were trying something else. Learned about a ship that had arrived 3 weeks ago. It carried medical supplies, according to official records, but workers who unloaded it spoke of strange containers, sealed with warnings in languages no one recognized. The containers had gone to the embassy and had not come out. He learned about children, orphans from a colony destroyed by a plague 5 years ago. The had offered to care for them. It was presented as a gesture of goodwill between species. 30 children had gone to space. Only 12 had returned for the ceremony. And he learned about a doctor, a surgeon known for experimental procedures. The same surgeon had been seen entering the embassy 2 days ago. The picture was becoming clear, and it was horrible. Return to the upper levels. He needed to warn the Empress directly. The guards would not listen, but perhaps she would. Perhaps she would see what her protectors could not. He found her in a private garden, a place of blue trees and silver flowers. She sat alone on a bench, reading something on a glowing tablet. For a moment, she looked almost ordinary. Not an empress, just a person enjoying a quiet morning. Approach slowly. Two royal guards moved to intercept him, but the empress raised her hand. "Let the human speak," she said. Her voice was like music, deep and ancient. "I am curious what brings him here." Bowed his head. "Your Majesty, I believe your life is in danger. I have found evidence of a conspiracy involving the hegemony. They plan to attack during the blessing of the young." The Empress studied him with her four purple eyes. Her expression was difficult to read. "You are the human assigned to stand beside me." "Cole, yes. Tell me, Cole, how many assassination attempts have you survived?" "None, Your Majesty." "I have survived 17. My guards have protected me for 300 years. They have wanted me dead for most of that time. This is not new information." Nodded. "I understand. But this attempt is different. They are not sending warriors or bombs. They are using something you would never suspect." "And what is that?" "A child." The garden fell silent. Even the artificial wind seemed to stop. The Empress's eyes narrowed slightly. It was the first real emotion had seen from her. "Explain," she said. Told her everything. The orphans taken to space. The surgeon. The sealed containers. The servant he had seen preparing the ceremony hall. He spoke quickly but clearly, laying out each piece of evidence like stones building a path. When he finished, the Empress was quiet for a long time. Then she asked a question that surprised him. "Why do you care, human? I have shown you no kindness. My people treat you as less than a servant. If I die, your species loses nothing. Perhaps you even gain something. The galaxy would be in chaos. Opportunities would arise." Thought about the question. He thought about Earth, about the wars he had fought, about the friends he had lost. He thought about the child, whoever they were, being turned into a weapon without their knowledge or consent. "Because someone is going to hurt a kid," he said simply. "That is not acceptable." The Empress tilted her head. "That is your reason, a child you have never met." "Yes." She studied him for another long moment. Then she stood, and for the first time she looked at him as if he were a person rather than furniture. "Your warning is noted," she said. "I will speak with my guards. Additional security will be arranged." Felt a small wave of relief. "Thank you, Your Majesty." "Do not thank me yet, human. If you are wrong, you will have caused great insult to the— If you are right," she paused. "If you are right, then I owe you a debt, and the do not forget their debts." She walked away, her silver robes trailing behind her like water. Watched her go. He had done what he could. The rest was out of his hands. But something in his gut told him it would not be enough. The royal guard would add more warriors, more weapons, more watchers. They would look for threats they understood. They would not look for a child walking calmly toward the Empress with death hidden inside their body. Returned to his quarters. He had 3 hours before the ceremony. He checked his equipment again. His rifle would be useless in that crowd. His knife was too slow. But the nano jammer in his blood might make a difference. If the weapon inside the child was triggered by a signal, he could disrupt it. He would need to be close, very close. He looked at himself in the mirror. A tired man with gray in his hair and scars on his face. 43 years old, unremarkable in every way. The galaxy saw him as primitive, simple, unimportant. Maybe that was an advantage. Nobody watched the furniture. Nobody worried about the insect. Put on his armor. He checked his weapons one final time. Then he walked toward the Grand Convergence Hall, where thousands of the galaxy's most powerful beings were gathering to watch an empress bless the children of her empire. Somewhere in that crowd, a child was walking toward death, and was the only one who might be able to stop it. He did not know if he would survive the next few hours. He did not know if anyone would remember his name. It did not matter. He had a job to do. The Grand Convergence Hall was filled with light and sound and the weight of history. 3,000 delegates sat in rising tiers around a central platform. Cameras broadcast the ceremony to 1 trillion screens across the galaxy. This was the moment when the Empress would bless the children of her empire, a tradition older than human civilization. Stood in his assigned position, 15 meters from the throne. The royal guards had increased their numbers just as the Empress had promised. 50 warriors now surrounded the platform, their weapons ready, their eyes scanning the crowd. They looked for assassins in the shadows. They looked for weapons hidden in clothing. They looked for threats they understood. They did not look at the children. 12 young walked slowly toward the platform. They wore white robes and carried small flowers in their hands. Their faces showed wonder and nervousness. This was the greatest moment of their young lives. They would stand before their Empress and receive her blessing. Watched each child carefully. 11 of them moved the way children move, with energy barely contained, with excitement they could not hide. But one child moved differently. A small girl, perhaps 7 years old in human terms, walked with perfect calm. Her steps were measured. Her eyes were fixed on the Empress. She did not look at the crowd. She did not look at the other children. She looked only at her target. Felt his heart begin to pound. He looked at the royal guards. None of them had noticed. Why would they? She was a child. She was supposed to be here. She was dressed like all the others. The perfect weapon hidden in plain sight. The ceremony began. Music filled the hall, strange and beautiful. The Empress rose from her throne and descended to the platform where the children waited. She moved with grace and power, her silver robes flowing behind her. The crowd watched in silence. This was sacred. This was beautiful. This was the moment. The first child approached. The Empress placed her hand on the child's head and spoke words of blessing. The child smiled and stepped aside. The second child approached, then the third, then the fourth. The girl with the calm eyes was 7th in line. Calculated the distance. 15 meters, too far. He would never reach her in time if he started from here. He needed to move closer. He stepped forward. One of the royal guards noticed and raised a hand to stop him. Return to your position, human. I need to be closer to the Empress. You need to stay where you are. The 5th child received the blessing. The 6th child stepped forward. Time was running out. Looked at the guard. He looked at the girl. He made his choice. He moved fast, faster than the guards expected. He pushed past the first one and ran toward the platform. Behind him, voices shouted in alarm. Weapons powered up. The crowd gasped. The royal guards reacted instantly. They saw a human running toward their Empress. They saw a threat. 3 of them intercepted him before he reached the platform. They were bigger, stronger, faster. They hit him like a wall. Did not try to win. He could not win against warriors who had trained for centuries. Instead, he fought to delay. He twisted and ducked and took hits that cracked his ribs. He used every dirty trick he had learned in the brutal wars of Earth. An elbow to a throat. A knee to a joint, a headbutt that shattered his own nose but stunned his opponent. Blood filled his mouth, pain exploded through his body, but he kept moving. The girl was approaching the Empress. The 6th child had finished. The girl stepped forward, her flower held out, her eyes fixed and empty. Broke through. He was not graceful, he was not heroic. He stumbled onto the platform, covered in blood, bones broken, barely able to stand. The Empress stared at him with shock. The crowd screamed. Guards raised their weapons, but did not look at any of them. He looked only at the child. He saw the moment her eyes changed. Something activated inside her, something she did not control. Her small body began to glow with a faint blue light. The quantum in her chest was powering up. Threw himself forward. He wrapped his arms around the girl and pulled her close, his body between her and the Empress. He activated the nano jammer in his blood, pushing it to maximum power. Every cell in his body screamed as the device burned through his system. The blue light flickered, pulsed, and then faded. Everyone fell silent. The entire hall, 3,000 of the galaxy's most powerful beings, watched as a single human held a child against his chest. They did not understand what had happened. They did not know what he had stopped. They only saw a broken man, bleeding on the sacred platform, protecting a child who had been sent to kill. The girl began to cry. She did not know what had been done to her. She did not know what she had almost become. She only knew that she was scared and confused and someone was holding her. Held her, his vision was going dark. The nano jammer had done terrible damage to his body. He could feel himself dying. "It is okay," he whispered to the child. "It is okay, you are safe now." The Empress stood above them. Her face showed an expression that her people had never seen. 300 years of rule and she had never looked like this. Shocked, confused, and something else. Something that might have been wonder. She knelt beside the human and the child. Slowly, carefully, she reached out and touched his face. It was the first time she had ever touched a non with her own hands. "Why?" she asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Why did you do this?" Looked up at her with fatting eyes. Blood dripped from his lips. His body was broken beyond repair. "Because someone had to," he said, "and I was there." Then his eyes closed and he fell still. The hall remained silent. No one moved. No one spoke. They had just witnessed something that would change the galaxy forever. A single human, dismissed by everyone, ignored by everyone, had given his life to protect an empress who barely knew his name and a child he had never met. On the platform, surrounded by the most powerful beings in the universe, Empress held the dying human in her arms and did something she had not done in 200 years. She wept. Did not die. The doctors said it was impossible. The nano jammer had burned through his organs. His heart had stopped 3 times. His brain had gone without oxygen for 7 minutes. By every measure known to galactic medicine, he should have been dead before he hit the floor. But humans, the doctors learned, did not follow the rules. They discovered that human bodies were designed for damage. Millions of years of evolution on a harsh world had built them to survive things that would kill other species instantly. They could lose blood and keep fighting. They could break bones and keep moving. They could die on the table and somehow, impossibly, come back. Woke up 9 days after the ceremony. He was in a medical bay filled with machines he did not recognize. Tubes connected his body to devices that hummed with quiet power. When he opened his eyes, he found the Empress sitting beside his bed. She looked different without her ceremonial robes. Smaller, somehow, more real. She was reading something on a tablet, and when she noticed he was awake, she set it aside. "You should be dead," she said. Tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. She handed him a cup of water. He drank slowly, feeling the liquid cool his damaged insides. "What happened?" he managed to ask. "You saved my life, and the child's life. The device inside her would have destroyed everything within 50 meters. I would have died. The children would have died. Hundreds of delegates would have died." Nodded slowly. His memories of that day were scattered and strange, like pieces of a broken mirror. "The girl," he said, "is she okay?" The Empress studied him with her 4 purple eyes. "You almost died. Your body is still more damaged than healthy, and your first question is about the child. Is she okay?" "Yes." The surgeons removed the device from her chest. "She is recovering. She asks about you constantly. She wants to know the name of the human who held her." Felt something release in his chest, a tension he had not known he was carrying. The girl was safe. That was what mattered. He said, "What happened to them?" The Empress's expression hardened. "The conspiracy has been exposed. We found evidence connecting the hegemony to the attack. Their ambassador has been arrested. Their delegation has been expelled. My people are calling for war." "And what do you want?" She was silent for a long moment. Then she said something that surprised him. "I want to understand." "Understand what?" "You," she leaned forward, her eyes searching his face. My guards have protected me for 300 years. They are the finest warriors in the galaxy. They would die for me without hesitation. But they did not see the threat. You did. A human. A species we have dismissed as primitive. A species we barely considered worth noticing. Did not have a good answer. Humans are good at seeing danger. We have spent a long time hurting each other. We learned to recognize the signs. That is not what I want to understand. The Empress shook her head. I want to understand why you acted. My guards would die for me because it is their duty, because they are bound by oath and honor and tradition. But you had no such bonds. I had shown you no kindness. My people had treated you with contempt. You owed me nothing. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was quieter. So why did you choose to die for me? Thought about the question. He thought about the wars he had fought on Earth, the friends he had lost, the things he had seen. He thought about the girl with the empty eyes, walking toward her death without knowing it. I did not do it for you, he said honestly. I did it for the kid. Someone put a bomb inside a child and sent her to die. That is wrong. It does not matter who the target is. It does not matter who the child is. Using kids as weapons is wrong. I could not let it happen. Even if it meant your death. Even then. The Empress sat back. For a long time she said nothing. Then she stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. My people calculate, she said. We measure costs and benefits. We weigh risks and rewards. Every decision is made through logic and analysis. It is how we have survived for 1,000,000 years. She turned back to face him. But you did not calculate. You simply acted. You saw something wrong and you moved to stop it without thinking about what it would cost you. That is not logical. It is not rational. By every measure my people use, it is foolish. Shrugged, and the motion sent pain through his broken ribs. Humans are foolish. We know that. No, the Empress shook her head. It is not foolishness. It is something else. Something my people have forgotten. Something the ancient races lost long ago. She walked back to his bedside and looked down at him with an expression he could not read. You call it conscience, she said. The voice inside that tells you what is right even when it is dangerous, even when it is costly, even when no one else can see. My people used to have that voice. We silenced it because it was inefficient. She reached out and touched his hand. Her skin was cool and smooth. You have reminded me what we lost. Over the following weeks, the galaxy changed. The hegemony, exposed and shamed, faced sanctions from every major power. War was avoided, but only barely. The Empress chose justice over revenge, calling for a tribunal instead of battle. When asked why, she said that wisdom had been shown to her by an unlikely teacher. Humanity's status changed overnight. They were no longer primitives to be. They were unpredictable, dangerous, and capable of something the ancient races had forgotten: sacrifice without calculation. The girl, whose name was adopted into the Empress's household. She had no family left. They had taken everything from her, but she remembered the human who had held her, who had whispered that she was safe. One day she asked to see him. Was still recovering when she came to his room. She was small and thin, with silver skin and eyes that were beginning to show life again. She stood at the foot of his bed and looked at him for a long time. You saved me, she said. I did what anyone would do. No, she shook her head, and for a moment she looked much older than her years. No one else moved, I remember. Everyone was watching, everyone was still. Only you moved. She walked closer and took his hand. Her fingers were tiny against his palm. Why? Looked at this child, this small person who had been turned into a weapon without her knowledge or consent. He thought about all the children on Earth who had suffered in wars they did not start. He thought about the ones he could not save. Because someone had to, he said, and I was there. Nodded as if this answer made perfect sense. Then she climbed onto the bed beside him, curled up against his side, and fell asleep. lay still, looking at the ceiling, feeling the small heartbeat against his chest. Outside, the stars turned slowly. The galaxy continued its ancient dance, and somewhere in a million worlds, people were talking about a human who had done the impossible. He did not care about fame. He did not care about glory. He only cared that a child was safe, warm, and sleeping peacefully beside him. That was enough. That was everything. 1 year had passed since the day everyone fell silent. Stood in his usual position, slightly behind and to the left of the Empress's throne. He wore new armor now, white and silver instead of gray, marked with the symbol of the Dominion. His title was Oran, which meant Shadow of Honor. It was a position that had existed for 100,000 years, but had never been held by anyone outside the species. Until now. The galaxy had watched this appointment with shock and confusion. Some species called it an insult to tradition. Others called it a sign that the ancient ways were dying. But Empress had been clear. Cole had earned this place. He had proven himself in a way that transcended species, transcended politics, transcended everything except simple truth. He had been willing to die for strangers. That meant something. Had struggled with the decision to accept. Taking this position meant leaving Earth, possibly forever. It meant becoming something other than human in the eyes of his own people. Some called him a traitor, others called him a hero. He did not feel like either. He felt like a man who had been given a job, and who intended to do it well. The past year had been strange and difficult. Court politics were more complex than any battlefield. Species that had ignored humanity for decades now watched every word said. Some wanted to use him. Others wanted to destroy him. The nobles whispered behind his back, questioning why an alien stood so close to their empress. Dealt with all of it the same way, with honesty. He did not play games. He did not scheme or manipulate. When someone asked his opinion, he gave it directly. When someone lied to him, he said so. It was terrifying to species who had spent centuries perfecting the art of deception. They did not know how to handle someone who simply told the truth. The Empress found it refreshing. She had been surrounded by careful words and hidden meanings her entire life. Was different. He said what he thought. He meant what he said. In a universe of shadows, he was something solid. Had become his constant companion. The girl who had been turned into a weapon was slowly learning how to be a child again. She followed everywhere, asking questions about humans, about Earth, about the strange species that had saved her life. He taught her human songs and human stories. He taught her that strength was not the same as cruelty, and that kindness was not the same as weakness. She called him her guardian. The Empress called him her advisor. The galaxy called him many things, not all of them kind. Called himself what he had always been, a soldier with a job to do. The final test came on a cold morning in the 3rd month of the new year. Intelligence reports had detected movement among the remnants of the conspiracy. The masterminds behind the assassination attempt had escaped justice. They had been hiding, planning, waiting. Now they were making their move. A team of assassins had infiltrated Their target was not the Empress this time. It was himself. They believed that killing the human would send a message, that the old ways still held power, that aliens had no place in affairs. The royal guard wanted to lock away until the threat was neutralized. The Empress wanted to call in the fleet and burn the assassins from orbit, but had a different idea. He asked for a meeting. The assassins were former soldiers, men and women who had believed in their cause so strongly that they had been willing to murder a child for it. They had been told that humans were weak, that they were primitive, that they could be broken easily. Now one of those humans wanted to talk. They agreed, if only out of curiosity. The meeting took place in a neutral location, a ruined temple on a moon that belonged to no one. Came alone. He wore no armor, carried no weapons. He stood in the center of the ancient stones and waited. 12 assassins emerged from the shadows. They were armed with weapons that could kill him 100 times over. Their leader, a named, approached with his blade drawn. "You are brave," said, "or stupid, perhaps both." "Perhaps," agreed. "You know, we are going to kill you." "Maybe, but first I want to offer you something." The assassins laughed. What could a human offer them? Power, wealth. They had given up such things long ago. "A choice," said. The laughter stopped. "You were soldiers once," continued. "You believed in something. You thought you were protecting your people, your way of life. The leaders you trusted told you that killing an empress and a child was necessary for the greater good." He paused, looking at each of them in turn. "Those leaders lied. They used you. They threw away your honor and your futures for their own power. And now you are here, hiding in ruins, waiting to murder a single man because it is the only thing left that makes sense." His grip on his blade tightened. "You know nothing of our struggles." "I know about being used," said quietly. "I know about fighting wars that serve someone else's purpose. I know about looking back at the things you have done and wondering if any of it mattered." He stepped closer and the assassins tensed, but he made no move to attack. "I am offering you a different path. Not justice, not punishment, just a choice. You can kill me here. You can die fighting the forces that are certainly waiting outside this temple. You can end your stories as villains, remembered only for the terrible things you were ordered to do." He held out his empty hands. "Or you can walk away, disappear, start over, become something other than what you were made to be. It will not be easy, it may not even be possible, but it will be your choice. For the first time in a long time, it will be yours." The temple was silent. The assassins looked at each other, uncertain. This was not what they had expected. This was not how enemies behaved. Stared at for a long moment. Then slowly he lowered his blade. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you offer us this? We were going to kill you." Smiled, and there was something sad in his eyes. "Because I believe people can change. It is irrational. It is probably foolish. But humans have always believed that tomorrow can be different from today. That is how we survive. That is how we hope." One by one, the assassins made their choices. Some left, vanishing into the galaxy to find new lives. Some stayed, surrendering to the forces outside. Some simply sat down in the ruins, too tired to decide anything. None of them killed Cole. The news spread across the galaxy. The human had faced 12 assassins alone and unarmed. He had offered them mercy instead of war. And somehow, impossibly, it had worked. The Empress watched the broadcasts with a strange expression on her face. She had known for a year now. She had seen him navigate politics and survive threats and teach a broken child how to laugh again. But this was something new. "You truly believe anyone can change?" she said when he returned. "Yes. Even after everything they have done. Especially then." She shook her head slowly. "My people have studied the universe for 1,000,000 years. We have mapped every star and calculated every probability, but we never understood this. This irrational hope. This stubborn belief that things can be better." She looked at him, and for the first time saw something like admiration in her ancient eyes. "Humanity is young," she said. "Primitive by our standards. You have so much to learn about the universe." She smiled, and it transformed her face. "But perhaps we have something to learn from you as well." 1 month later, Empress addressed the galaxy. She announced that humanity was being elevated from observed species to partners of the convergence. It was a status that other species had taken millions of years to achieve. Humanity had earned it in 41 years. The broadcast showed standing in his usual place, slightly behind and to the left. He did not speak. He did not move. He simply watched as he always did. A young diplomat, watching from a distant planet, turned to an elder and asked why the Empress trusted the humans so completely. The elder was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Because when everyone else was calculating the cost of action, he was already moving. Humans do not ask if something is possible, they ask if it is right, and then they do it anyway. Far away in the throne room of the Dominion, Cole stood beside an empress who had become his friend. Sat nearby, drawing pictures of humans and standing together under alien stars. The galaxy turned slowly around them, ancient and vast and full of wonders. Did not know what the future would bring. He did not know if humanity would rise to meet the challenges ahead or fall to the dangers that lurked in the darkness between stars. He only knew that he would face whatever came with the same simple philosophy that had guided him all his life. When something is wrong, you try to fix it. When someone needs help, you give it. When a child is in danger, you protect them. Not because it is logical, not because it is safe, but because it is right. And that, in the end, is what it means to be human.